Thank you all for being here. My name is Bill Beach, and I am the director, moderator, and bell ringer for this conference. This is I think, one of the most important topics in this town, America in debt. It's got so many ramifications and we're going to explore that topic from a historical and from a policy standpoint this morning. But before we begin focusing on this really pressing problem, let's take a moment to celebrate the amazing country that we live in. With all of its problems, it is the best place to be. By singing the national anthem. And to lead us in that, I now invite to the stage Patrick Pennell, Chloe Peters, and Yeung Hong.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Well, if that doesn't get you going, nothing will. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much. Before I say a few words about the theme of this conference, I would like to particularly thank the Government Accountability Office for generously printing 250 copies of their February 28th report on our fiscal health. That's a wonderful gesture, and this is a truly wonderful report. So if you're here, and I hope you are, from the Government Accountability Office, would you please stand so we can recognize you? And there we are down there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's just really, really terrific. If you don't have a copy, we have plenty of copies thanks to this wonderful organization. And I hope you picked up your 1 million Bolivar available for everyone in your folder. That's a reminder that debt matters to the economic health of a country. And one of the ways we pay for excessive deficits and excessive debt, hopefully we won't pay that way, but many governments have through devaluation of their currency. Finally, we will be presenting today's speakers with the Calvin Coolidge dollar, and it is going up in value, not down in value. And this is a reminder of really how really difficult public policy matters can be resolved if you have some people, some group of people, a lot of people resolutely looking at solving seemingly intractable problems. So let me set the stage, and then we will turn to Congresswoman Foxx, I believe, to start. Dr. Reft, we'll have her speak first, and then we'll come back to you. Today's event is a debt conference, but it's really a history conference as well. We have to know where we have come in order to know how we resolve our problems. How did America overcome its debt in the past? Why is there trouble today? And we are really in trouble. Publicly held debt has grown by $26.4 trillion over the past 20 years. That is a pace of $1.3 trillion per year. It's grown by $16.4 trillion over the past 10 years. That's a pace of $1.6 trillion per year. It has grown by $10.5 trillion over the past 5 years, or at a pace of $2.1 trillion per year. That is obviously an accelerating rate. We think this acceleration can be addressed through better appreciation of what we're calling the Hamiltonian norm, and you'll hear that term a lot today. By adhering to that norm, American leadership was able to skirt prior debt disasters. When we stopped adhering to that norm, we found our debt became quite uncontrollable. Here's the story that we'll be tracing for you today. To survive after 1789, the new republic needed to swiftly assure its major creditors, primarily Dutch and French banks, that we would repay our debts and be good credit risks. We needed to establish a stable banking and monetary system, absolutely crucial. We did that thanks to Alexander Hamilton, who made tough decisions and established a credit system for the new federal government. The norm, we're calling it Hamilton's rule, was that the United States would always work to repay its debts first. Through our monetary system, we would keep inflation low by supporting the value of our bonds. Our fiscal programs, what Congress is primarily responsible for, spending by the government at home, or management of tariffs, would not be permitted to endanger that norm. In other words, our debts would be paid, the value of the debt would not be inflated away, and Congress would always act to support the high quality of America's financial promises. A substantial amount of credit for this must go to Alexander Hamilton, so we call it the Hamiltonian norm. His system worked exceptionally well. We all know that the United States hasn't always abided by the norm, sometimes because of emergencies, and emergencies they're just unexpected, right? We have to react to them. But we did come back to the norm. Congress and the President generally worked to restore balance and resume adherence to the norm as quickly as possible throughout most of the 20th century. Perhaps the most heroic and overlooked effort to restore the norm occurred during the administrations of Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge. These presidents, but particularly Coolidge, worked diligently to reduce massive spending and debt increases stemming from World War I, and they succeeded. Lately, however, we've seen a shift that threatens to be permanent, a shift away from the norm, and you will hear about that shift in our panels today. Today, we find ourselves very far indeed from these happy budget outcomes of 1929. Here are some indicators, and I've just mentioned a few. Massive increases in publicly held debt, there's massive increases in spending in the trillions of dollars. And I think this is controversial, but I think it is nevertheless possible to trace the extraordinary deficits that we've had through the banking system, as the banking system has funded those debts into loans, those loans going into household budgets, those household budgets chasing goods, and the inflation which we've recently been through stemming from a fiscal source. Federal outlays for all purposes have grown by 43% over just the past 4 or 5 years. Some people offer theories to suggest that the norm no longer matters, that fiscal concerns which translate to social concerns should dominate monetary concerns. If you consider economic inequality an evil so great that ending it should be the primary goal of government, monetary has to come in second for you. You need to have fiscal dominance. Perhaps you've heard of modern monetary theory. That's a school of thought that says that debt doesn't matter much. Has the Hamiltonian norm died? Today's conference explores the rise and fall of the norm, its development, trials, and tribulations. We cannot cover every financial crisis in one day, and we ask for you to forgive us on that. We'll be skipping around quite a bit. Still, we've assembled a discussion that captures the key events. And to guide us, we've assembled extraordinary cast of moderators and presenters. Feast your eyes on today's program, which I think is one of the most beautiful programs I've ever seen. It's just extraordinary work product by the Coolidge Foundation. To begin this important conference, I would now like to call, Congresswoman, I think I'll call on you first. We are I'd like to introduce you first, actually. We are just extremely pleased to have with us just a wonderful representative, Virginia Foxx from North Carolina. Congresswoman Foxx has represented the 5th Congressional District of North Carolina since 2004, which followed a distinguished career in teaching and state government service. Dr. Foxx owns a doctorate in education, and she currently is chair of the Committee on Education and Workforce and a well-known advocate of fiscal discipline, pro-growth taxation, and stable public debt. Please join me in welcoming Congresswoman Foxx.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beach. I am really, really honored to be here today and to see such a distinguished group of people. I feel like in the field of finance, I'm a little out of my league, but I am so honored that Amity invited me to come and to be here with my good friend, Peter Welch. I will have to tell you that I have to run right after my speech, and I'm sorry about doing that. And I want to say, I debated about whether to wear green or red today, I have to tell you. And then I decided everybody else would be wearing green, I'd be wearing red because that's the state of our country right now. And I do think colors have some symbolic meaning. To see all these young people here is wonderful, and to see some of my former colleagues here is absolutely wonderful too. I'm grateful to the Coolidge Foundation and Amity for the opportunity to be here in the spirit of fellowship. I've always held an abiding gratitude and admiration for President Coolidge and the principles upon which he stood. And I know all of you have read Amity's book, Coolidge, so from that you understand why. His staunch frugality, coupled with his budgetary prowess, have always served as a guidepost for everyone who ascribes to principles of fiscal conservatism. He also prized brevity, which I particularly appreciate. So just ask my colleagues about how succinct I strive to be. History confirms with blinding clarity how the underpinnings of President Coolidge's work served America well, and how much we could use his example now. During every year of his presidency, from 1923 to 1929, he balanced the budget and ran a surplus, thereby cementing the nation's reputation within international marketplaces and giving rise to unbridled growth and prosperity for every American. One of the more unappreciated things about President Coolidge, and something that I deeply admire, is that he served as a voice for people who believed in eliminating waste, saving money, and building a society that both revered and exercised fiscal constraint. I grew up extraordinarily poor in the mountains of North Carolina. We lived in small houses with no electricity or running water, just like President Coolidge. My parents, while dedicated and hardworking, were poor with little formal education. From an early age, I understood the value of frugality, exercising fiscal restraint, and completing a hard day's work. Today, I still hold those understandings. I'll tell you that they've guided me throughout my entire life, from that small house in the mountains of North Carolina to now as I serve in the People's House. President Coolidge was a voice for people like me, my family, and countless others. The mark that he left and the wisdom that he imparted upon the entire nation remain indelible. President Coolidge's affinity for fiscal conservatism, his abounding frugality, and the budgetary evangelism that he brought to the American people should be extended the due deference they deserve. And we would all do well to follow the model that he set. And while history books are not chock full of recognition of President Coolidge, as they should, all of us here can appreciate the groundwork he laid for the nation. We can also appreciate his belief that the federal government should be kept on a short and tight leash, and that America is a land teeming with bountiful opportunity for all, just like it has been for me. Let's not lose sight of the principles upon which President Coolidge stood, for they should be our principles today, and they're worth preserving and passing along to future generations. And again, it's so exciting to see all these young people here today. I thank the Coolidge Foundation for extending the invitation for me to speak to you this morning, and I would give anything if I could stay here all day long with you and hear these wonderful comments that are going to be made. But duty calls. May God continue to bless you, your families, and our magnificent republic. Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Give me my dollar.
Yes. Okay. This is our first Coolidge dollar, and it goes to you.
Well, thank you very much. I will cherish it.
Yes, wonderful. Be careful now. You can actually take that somewhere, I expect, and get some value for it. It is now my great privilege to call to the podium a truly distinguished Vermonter, Senator Peter Welch. Senator Welch established his credentials as an advocate for marginalized Vermonters through his early law practice and service in the state Senate. He came to Washington in 2006 as Vermont's sole congressman to the House. He succeeded, I don't know, Senator, you're now sharing, there's two Vermonters in your chamber now, but you were the single Vermonter before, so is that a step up or a step down? He came to Washington in 2006 as Vermont's, I just said that, he succeeded Vermont's long-serving Senator Patrick Leahy in 2022. As U.S. Senator, Peter Welch works on issues as diverse as climate change and investment in rural America. Please join me in welcoming Senator Welch to the podium.
Thank you very much. You know, I think it's great. You got liberals like Virginia Foxx and conservatives like me to talk about something that actually is an issue for all of us. And I love the Coolidge Foundation. I really do. Of course, Governor Douglas and I live in Vermont, and we're so proud of that beautiful, modest, elegant homestead in Plymouth, Vermont. And Amity, it was so wonderful to be there. And I see some of the senators, right? Where are they? Where are the senators? Well, it's so terrific that you're here for an extraordinary conference. Dr. Beach, what a group you have. It's really, really terrific. You know, this debt issue, I want to start with something that Dr. Beach said. The Hamiltonian norm. Norms are important. Really important. And one of the Hamiltonian norms that served our country so well for so long and is now, frankly, under assault is that we pay our bills. You know, after the Revolutionary War, we were broke. And there was an opportunity for the United States to stiff its creditors. And there was a lot of political pressure that was put on our leaders at that time to do that. And the case was, we're broke, and we got to get started. And we just can't afford it. And at that moment where our future was in doubt, we severed from Great Britain, England, but we were broke. The prospects of our country were not foreseen. They were in creation. Hamilton said, no, we pay our bills. And our country paid at that time when we didn't have the capacity to do it, and it was great sacrifice in order to accomplish it, we paid all our debts back. We got to remember that, because that was a norm. That wasn't like a constitutional duty at that point. It was just what honorable countries did. And what is really concerning to me is that the times we're living in now, those norms are being challenged. Where we have a debate in Congress as to whether or not we should default on our debt. Can you imagine Calvin Coolidge or Alexander Hamilton allowing that to be a discussion? It's on us, the Congress, to figure out how to get to balance. We've got to pay our bills. That's another norm. You know, you pay your bills, and it may be that we have enormous political debates about the role of government and how we should spend our money and how we should raise our money. And, you know, I'm somebody on the liberal side who thinks that, in fact, we should help folks with child care. We should have health care that's available to people who can't afford it. But you know what? I think we got to pay for it. And a lot of my conservative friends, and I mean that, we got French Hill here, who's one of our outstanding members of Congress. The tax cuts, we can have a debate about that. But at the end of the day, it's got to work out. And the other thing is that it's not, the Hamiltonian norm reminds me a little bit, Governor Douglas, you worked for Governor Snelling. And we don't have in Vermont a constitutional requirement to balance our budget. We always do. And it's kind of a norm that has been accepted by Republican and Democratic administrations and Republicans and Democrats in Congress. So it's a norm that has guided us. And the point that is so important for us to understand is that those norms are what are going to get us through the tough times. And it'll allow us, you know, that graph you showed of President Coolidge lowering the debt, and he was proud of that, and rightly so. What was looming ahead of us was the Great Depression. And that was a moment where, in fact, government had to borrow money in order to keep us going. You know, that was a particular situation, a particular moment in the economy where I think in retrospect, borrowing money was good to do. But this is the Snelling point of full cycle budgeting. He understood that meant that when good times came, that's when you had the opportunity to significantly and aggressively pay down debt. So you'd have that balance sheet that you needed in the event things turned dark and you needed the effort of government in order to stimulate the economy. Now, we can have debate about that, about how to do it, but what I don't think should ever be in debate is the norm that Hamilton established at the beginning of our country. We pay our bills. What is you're going to talk today about how you balance the budget, how you get there. And it's got to include revenues, in my view. It's got to include spending restraint. But the biggest challenge for us is it has to include a mutual acceptance of norms that are in our Congress right now under assault. Can we shut down government? Should that be seriously a debate? Because that's just avoiding addressing the issues that have to be resolved. And you know what? When Congress says it's going to shut government down, that's so irresponsible in my view, because it's our job, Republicans and Democrats, to figure it out and get it done. When we come up to a debt default, is it really a serious discussion that Hamilton would ever have or Coolidge would ever have, that we're going to stiff our creditors because that's how we'll get our way? And that is a norm that has guided us, that we pay our bills ever since the beginning of our country. So in your discussion about how to get to balance and how to have governmental capacity to address changing circumstances, there has to be some discussion about how we restore those norms that Hamilton gave us when he began, that Calvin Coolidge embraced as president and when he was governor of Massachusetts. And that is on all of us, where we recognize a very basic, very simple proposition. We pay our bills. That's how it goes. How we do it, a lot of room for debate. How we get there, a lot of room for debate, but no room for debate, in my view, about our obligation to do what Hamilton did. So thank you all very much for carrying on this tradition and embrace of those norms. Thank you. And by the way, thanks for the $1 million. I really like that. I don't use it. Let's just keep this on the down low. We're not supposed to take cash when we come in here.
My great honor to give you a real dollar there.
Oh, wow. That's
There
great.
you go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator. Marvelous. Now I'd like to call Ryan Reft to the podium. Ryan Reft is a historian of modern U.S. history with a focus on domestic policy and politics in the manuscript division of this Library of Congress. I think I'm right in saying that you are in the largest library building in the world right now. 6 stories up and 5 stories down, is that?
I don't know if it's by size or by contents.
It's probably by content. Yes, yes. Well, it's got to be big to hold all my books. That's all I got to say. Dr. Reft holds a PhD in U.S. urban history from the University of California, San Diego. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Reft to the stand. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I see we're running a little late, so I will expedite my comments so you guys can get on with this. As William just introduced me, I am in the manuscript division where I oversee 20th century collections pertaining to domestic and foreign policy. If you were at last year's conference, you may have been lucky enough to hear comments by my former colleague, Meg McAleer, who was a wonderful steward to the Coolidge papers and a wonderful historian in her own right. She has stepped down, and I'm taking over for briefly, and there will be someone replacing her. So in the future, if you are interested in the papers, you will be contacting another individual. We're very excited about that person. But let me welcome you here today. And in addition to us being the modestly titled World's Largest Library, we also have over 51 million catalog books, to be precise. But we have much more than that. We have maps. We have we have photographs in graphic prints, newspaper rooms, rare books, special collections, the American Folklife Center, the Veterans History Project. We have a constellation of material covering this nation's history from all aspects. And in the manuscript division, I think we collect things like diaries, scrapbooks, letters, photographs, drawings, historic reports, treaties, creative fiction, poetry, all the things that tell us about the 400 years of American history. And so we think it's wonderful that you're having this conference here today because, when I first started this job, I have a PhD in history. I think I'm not dumb. I'm not the smartest person in the room, things like that. But, I like to pay attention. You go in the back in the stacks. I'll be honest, I knew almost none of the people back there. None of them. And these were people who wrote best-selling books, were leading thinkers in their day, had no idea who they were, and I had a PhD. So what that tells me, you could either despair and say none of us matter, or you can say it's the ideas and our contribution, our engagement with them, and what that legacy leaves behind is what's important. Because that's what stays with the country, and those debates are what push us forward. And so I hope that you have a wonderful conference today. You can engage those ideas, and best of luck moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we are just we're just so blessed to be here. It is just a wonderful facility for this particular conference. And now, as our last kind of greeter this morning, before we go to the first panel, it's my just huge honor to introduce one of the few historians of the 20th century who really has focused in on the kinds of things that we're doing today. Amity Shlaes, the chair of the Coolidge Foundation. Most people know Amity as a New York Times bestselling author of The Greedy Hand, The Forgotten Man, magnificent book Coolidge, and most recently, The Great Society. If you haven't read any of them, there's 4 books you should go out and buy and read right away. She's won many awards for her scholarship and leadership, including the prestigious Bradley Prize. However, we at the Foundation know her best as our leader, our boss, our chair, who has transformed the Coolidge Foundation into a national force for history, policy, and education. Please join me in welcoming Amity Shlaes to the podium.
If I'm the leader, then Bill is the Alexander Hamilton of this conference. It's the beach norm we're following today. Thank you. It's my job to acknowledge the institutional presence, really, but I have to say one quote from an important president. Are you ready? There is no defense for any country that busts its own economy. And the name of the president who said that was Dwight David Eisenhower. And I mention him, why would Coolidge open with Ike? Because there's a long line of leaders. You heard Senator Welch, you heard Congresswoman Foxx, of leaders who understand the importance of paying your bills. There's no defense for a country that busts its own economy. Even Andrew Jackson, whom we don't give quite enough time today, did budget, that is, pay down. What the conference does is not only showcase Coolidge, but also show where he fits in history, that he's not an outlier. He's part of a tradition that we hope will be continued. This year as last year, there are many dozens of Coolidge students, scholars, and senators in the room, and debaters, may I not neglect, including declaimers. Angel. At the Coolidge Foundation, we believe that information must be available to all minds of all generations. We now have 800 students in our fold, one way or the other, and we hope to charm them and keep them. Please give us frank feedback, students. This look into the history of debt is possible because of some wonderful supporters. The library itself, Dr. Reft, Dr. Hayden, the head, for hosting us. We also thank the Bradley Foundation, Ambassador Rick Graber, who's here, leads that. His colleague Ingrid M. Gregg is here. We are so grateful for such support, and we thank our trustees who make this possible. Trustee Mike Kaiser and his wife Lindy, Trustee Dave Coolidge and Connie, Trustee Christopher Demuth, Coolidge Trustee John Childs, Coolidge Trustee Vlad Chorich, Coolidge Trustee Christopher Cox. You'll hear from some of these gentlemen and ladies. Judge Janice Rogers Brown, a Coolidge trustee who's here. Judge Edith Jones, who is here. Governor Jim Douglas, whom the senator referenced, who is our guiding spirit. Kathy Windells, Steve Forbes, there. And Jenny McCain, we are grateful to you. I also want to welcome, we have a guest, some friends from BNY Mellon, the bank. What does that have to do with Coolidge? BNY stands for Bank of New York. Who founded the Bank of New York? A man named Alexander H. And the Mellon part is Andrew Mellon's family. So this is the right bank to visit us, and we hope our presentation pleases you. I want to mention that present in the room is Jed Donahue, the editor of the Coolidge Review, which is on your table, along with that splendid GAO report. That's our new magazine. Our students appear in it, along with our grown-ups, so to speak. We mix generations. It doesn't matter what age your mind is if you have one, and we welcome our students. They have better minds than we often. And we would like to thank all virtual viewers. If you'd like to visit Plymouth in Vermont, I heard Congresswoman Foxx say she might come for the 4th of July. Please let us know, and we will help you find your way so you can see the beautiful Coolidge home instead. Finally, another presidential line. Perhaps one of the greatest satisfactions of my administration lies in the very marked reduction of the national debt since I have been president. That was Calvin. I know he's up there in budget heaven, blessing this endeavor. Thank you.